yeah, let's get started. So once you have almost finished your app, so what's the next step? Of course, for most of us, it's not like doing this for nothing. So I would feel like we probably need to monetize this stuff. So this goes to the next step, is to get some basic ideas and configuration from the Apple Connect. So that's place is where you managed all the purchasement and renewal or the refund, and that's kind of like the only thing that centralized every payment stuff. And most of the time the people are gonna choose I think the latest one is Store Kit 2, but you need to really start from scratch and build up everything. Especially you need to also think of how you're gonna collect all the stats from the user behavior, and also you need to think about how to deal with the extreme edge cases. For example, what if a lot of people just try to refund their subscription like simultaneously? So many things that will add extra loads of works. So at this time I decided to go with revenueCat. There are two very popular libraries. The first is React Native Purchase, and another one is quite classy, is React Native IAP. This kind of library is kind of like a one for all, so they're gonna help the developer to figure out all the stuff back the thing. So I think for my app, because I don't really know if people are gonna use it or not, so I don't want to put too much effort on this thing, because what if it ended up like 0 subscription and no one really bothered to buy this or purchase this product? It's not worth it for me to invest so much time. So that's why I just decided to go with the revenueCat. So because I think the revenueCat gonna save me tons of time and works. It gonna also speed up this IAP process. Long story short, I just, as you guys can see, I just build up this draw.io to try to summarize everything I've learned. There are a lot of things that not easy, especially when you decided to go with this kind of SDK. Even they help you to kind of like organize everything, but still you still need to know the basic flow. So right before everything goes off, we can think of this like the users started to subscribe stuff from your paywall, right? So from the Apple Connect, I don't want to go through too specific about how you're gonna set up the products and you know, for example here, the group, how you're gonna group your how to say plans, and also set up the identifiers, right, for your product. For example, if user gonna subscribe like monthly, how you're gonna set up this product, right? And also about yearly or lifetime subscription. But anyway, these kind of data or identifier are gonna be exactly the same as the ones you set up from the revenueCat. So basically the revenueCat gonna fetch all the configuration from the Apple Connect. So make sure you set up everything initially is quite right. For example, here I changed to Plus, but somehow after I implemented this kind of like a word in the UI, I feel this is not premium enough. So I want to change back to premium, but I think that's gonna add you a lot of extra works. But anyway, so this ID gonna be aligned with revenueCat's dashboard. This is about the Apple Connect part, right? And then we goes to the revenueCat. So revenueCat is basically the single source of truth. So once user here subscribe something from the Apple Connect, they're gonna have like a receipt and generate it, and revenueCat gonna manage all the behavior from the users. Let's go into the technical details. revenueCat gonna use the SDK that will be embedded in your phone to manage the front end. I would call this as front end, even it's mobile, but I will still go with front end. This makes it much easier to differentiate the different layers, right? So the front end gonna use the RC SDK, and I'm gonna talk through this SDK. The first part is SDK initialization, the second is the paywall, and third is customer information, and the last one is settings. So the SDK initialization, I'm gonna just record the most important things because for most of the time I think all of you guys probably good at reading through the documentation, especially for the basic concepts, but these notes are something I think that's worth noting, because you can think of this as something you need to really spend time to debug. So SDK need to be initialized, right? So you're gonna use these functions: purchase, configure, and because some of the apps, they don't have this authentication system designed. It really depends on what this app are for. So if your app designed with this authentication, you also want to implement the webhook in the near future, you definitely need to watch out this thing. That is, you must provide the user ID before it initializes the SDK. You can see here API key from revenueCat, and also you need to let the SDK know what is the user ID, right? So by doing this way, RSA dashboard gonna create the user profile based on the actual user ID. If you don't have that authentication system designed, RSA gonna generate a random user ID for you. But the downside of it is, once user changes to different devices or user just delete it, right, they need to restore to get their purchase back. Here you should say random generated ID. So if device changed, user need to follow the restore process. And if user just stay on the same device, and then the revenueCat recognize this device and manage the rest of work for you. This is basically the very first step, that is the initialization of the SDK. And then we go to the next step is paywall system. So paywall is based on the concept that the developers don't need to worry about how they design their paywall UIs. So everything is configurable. And so let's go through this process. So after you configured your dashboard here, right, RC dashboard paywall settings, this is pretty straightforward. You just follow their configuration. But one thing I do feel puzzled is I can't publish the paywall. Then I figured out that you must set some default product. If you fail to set the default product, you will not be able to publish your product here, right? So a default product set. So no, you can't publish. Yes, you can publish with the default offerings. You guys will notice this once you go through the dashboard by yourself. So it's pretty straightforward. How they present the paywall from the apps. So here's the key code pieces that it's pretty straightforward. You can have two ways. First is imperative ways. So you can write up the functions to say, okay, revenueCat UI, you need to present this paywall. And second is you can render this UI once needed. For example, you designed your root system, and this page gonna be this UI, right? So once user click something like subscribe, and then the router system gonna open up new handling view. So this handling view gonna render this dot paywall UI. So this is about the second one as paywall. So the third one, customer information. How the front end get the data from the revenue dashboard. That is uses purchase.getUserInfo. Inside the payload, you need to access this active attributes to judge if for example here, entitlement ID is premium. So if this premium is activated, and then you say that revenueCat had already helped you to get the right entitlement from this logged in user. The one thing I do want to say here is, for example, if user just subscribed your product and then it goes back to the maybe home page or profile page, how you're gonna refresh this data, right? So this revenueCat provision the functions that is the listener. So I had already covered the basic knowledge about subscription and trigger, pub and sub. So this basically the same idea is revenueCat gonna first enroll the listener functions. So every time once user purchase stuff, and they will trigger this event bus, and then here the listener gonna pick up the parameters from the trigger function. UI can be refreshed. But right before you think it's okay, I would like to add another note is, I don't know why, but revenueCat listener gonna have 5 times. So because if you put some console log inside this listeners, it will be noticed that there will be like 6 or 7. So if you accidentally leave the set states there, you're gonna re-render your UI for like 5 times. I think that's not something we want. Let's say if we have some like fetch schema, so if you ended up like consume the extra 6 or 7 times of the API calls, it's gonna ask for more money, right? So that's why you probably need to use ref to optimize the set states. Like I said, as more than 5 times triggers from the revenueCat. And last step, let's go to settings. So this one I won't go dive deeper because yeah, the documentation and everything is pretty straightforward. I just follow their documentation. Not too much to say. It's pretty easy. So till now we just worked through the basic SDK that will be embedded into your app, right? So then we goes to the next concept, that is webhook. So let's say user just subscribed to one of your renewable subscription, and then the receipt got to revenueCat, and revenueCat need to notify the backend, says okay, someone just ordered something, you need to deal with it. And also let's say if some user just refund the service, at this time you also need to be notified because you don't want the user still using your app without any payment, right? So here is what the magic happens. So revenueCat gonna send the notifications through the webhook to post this body to your endpoints. And we also can try to decide if you want to set the authorization header, but most of the time I think we probably gonna adopt this way because this is the recommended way and it's much safer. I of course had already set up this authorization header with a random generated token. So gonna go to your API gate. I just use a ng-rock to mimic the production behavior, and of course it's a HTTPS protocol. This one gonna map to your local host backend service. Your backend endpoint gonna validate the authorization header token. So if it's identical, then it can go to the next stage. But if it's not something you have registered in the revenueCat dashboard, then it's gonna be rejected. Then backend will handle the body, right? So you can either choose to store the information in the webhook event, or you just created this basic information in your subscription models. Yeah, here's one thing to note is once you get this request from the webhook, prior to process, you need to respond with the 200. If you don't do that, very soon the revenueCat gonna post another API call to a backend like in 5 or 10 or 100, right? The 5 times. We need to respond like immediately. This is how it looks for the stage 1, that is revenueCat test store. I have not actually configured the sandbox from the Apple Connect. That is my next step. Before you really set up the sandbox test scenario, you need to make sure every workflow already set up, and also you had already tested webhook work as expected, which means your Express or backend service can process the webhook from the revenueCat. The practice is the backend would be the only single source of truth. Even you think that the front end had already implemented SDK, and revenueCat can help to identify if the user is authenticated or is with the subscription plan, so whatever. But still, once the user try to use your functionalities, the API calls can also be validated as a middleware. For example, if the API calls, let's say, upload photo, right? The user just sent this request to the Express endpoints, and you add the entitlements as a middleware. So this API request gonna go through the revenueCat, get the latest subscription information from the Apple Connect. So if user still in the subscription scheme, and which means the API request can go through to your backend endpoints. But if user had already canceled the subscription, and this request gonna be rejected. Or you can say the API request goes to your endpoints with a middleware that is embedded with the subscription information, and then the endpoint can process some logic, like if the user had already used like 5 times pause, and the user need to pay for extra money to have the 6 times API call with this extra subscription information from webhook, so which means the information is well updated. The endpoint gonna respond with, okay, you had already reached the maximum upload or request. And then once this response get back to the front end, and you can trigger the revenueCat UI based on this code. For example, user had already created 5 tasks, and when user goes to the next one, and API detects that actually the maximum maximum task creation is 5. So if you want to create the 6th, it will reject this request with the code. So this front end gonna get this code. Based on this code, it can use here imperative ways to trigger the present paywall. The mobile end gonna present this paywall. The user can go through the subscription again. So this basically are the process from the revenueCat testing store. Next, like I said, next step for me is to test the sandbox, and once it's connected with Apple Connect, and which means the right configuration are passed to revenueCat, and then I think this feature is finished. I'm gonna go next stage, that is the host the backend service, and yeah, let's see if I'm able to release this product by the end of this year. All the best to myself. Thank you guys.